We're all set to go. Set? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending this community input session regarding redistricting. This session is being video and audio recorded to be subsequently placed online and made publicly available. And so you know this is not a typical meeting of both committees, because you know there's not all members of the committee are here. Before we get started, I think we have an announcement for someone to make. Come on up.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and I hope everybody had a good trip up. I know we're kind of out of the way up here in my hometown of Haverhill, but we like it here, and we're glad that you're here. Just a couple housekeeping issues. I've been in touch with maintenance about getting the ventilation system going, because it automatically shuts down at 5 p.m. So hopefully it'll be making you more comfortable very shortly. With respect to ingress and egress of this building that was opened in February 1972, I know it's kind of a maze in here, but the way that you came in is the fastest way in the event of a fire or something like that. I know that sounds kind of far-fetched, but I just need to make sure that you are aware of where the ingresses and egresses of this building are. In the event of any other kind of emergency or flames or something like that, going through this back door is going to lead you down to another, just push that, go forward. Clerk Carlson, our Superior Court clerk, has asked that nobody go into the back hallway where the judge's offices are, etc. But if you did need to do that in the event of emergency, that's fine. I will be out at the magnetometer where everybody came in. If you folks need me for anything, enjoy your stay with us. And any questions anybody has about the safety of the building, anything like that, before I can get out of your way here and let the important stuff begin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy. Just so everybody knows, there was a little snag in communication. So the clerk and the sheriff's department didn't know we were coming. So they did a last minute adjustment to their evening, and I want to thank you very much.
The sheriff got called at home. His wife was working late, so they probably went to my mother's all as well. I'm here with you for the duration. Enjoy.
Thank you. As this is a function of our general court, I'd like to begin by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me and stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is occurring, as you've just heard, in the Grafton County Courthouse with the permission of the court system and the county commissioners. Please understand, while we're in this facility, neither the courts of New Hampshire nor the county commissioners of Grafton have anything to do with this public session. This public input session is for the redistricting process as it is underway in the general court, and staff of the general court work to secure places to hold these sessions. And I'm grateful to the staff and the organizations that control the use of this facility to allow us to use them. As I stated, this is a joint meeting of the Senate and the House Redistricting Committee. We have members of both the House and the Senate here. This is a joint meeting. And with that, I would like to ask Senator Gray, who's the chair of the Senate Redistricting, to welcome us to his Senate meeting and introduce the members.
It didn't seem to like it when I turned the mic on. So I am Senator James Gray. I am the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Redistricting. I'm also the chair of the Election Law Committee. We do expect Senator Susi to arrive shortly. There's only 3 members on our committee, so but as is with the legislature, even one representative or senator can take testimony, and it will all be recorded so that the people can see it. No cheering, no booing, no signs. So with all of that, I think we're all set to go.
Thank you. That would be no cheering or booing for the Senate side. Okay. From the House, my name is Barbara Griffin. I'm a representative from Goffstown, and we have other House members with us this evening. So with that, if Representative Weber, could we start with you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Lucy Weber. I sit on the House Health Human Services and Elderly Affairs Committee. I'm also on the Special Committee on Redistricting. I represent Cheshire 1, which is the river towns to the south of Walpole, Westminster, Chesterfield, and Hinsdale. And thank you for having us here. Thank you. I'm Representative Lane. I'm from Ward 2 in Concord. I'm also on the election committee and this committee. I'm Marjorie Smith. I represent Durham and Manbury in Stratford County in the House, and I serve on the Judiciary Committee in addition to being on this committee, the Special Redistricting Committee for the House.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Representative Len Turcott, Stratford County District 4, which is the town of Barrington. Sit on, obviously, on this committee. Also sit on the Finance Committee, the Labor Committee, and Senior Advisor in the House Majority Office.
Wayne McDonald. I have the privilege of representing Londonderry, which is Rockingham County District 5. In addition to this committee, I also sit on the Election Law Committee as Vice Chairman.
I'm State Representative Matt Wilhelm from Manchester, representing wards 1, 2, and 3.
This is better. This
Yes.
is better. Great. I serve on the State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs Committee, and am proud to serve on this committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Mcguire.
Yes. Thank you. I'm Carol Mcguire, representing the towns of Allenstown, Epsom, and Pittsfield in Merrimack County. I'm the chair of the Housekeeping Committee as well as serving this.
Thank you, everybody. Just so everyone is aware, information on the redistricting process for the House of Representatives can be found on the General Court website. Once you're there, select the House of Representatives and select the standing committees of the House committees. This is the process you will get to any committee where you can review any bill that the General Court might be considering. The standing committee you would be the Special Committee on Redistricting. The Senate also has a page, and on those pages you will find a link. The House page will allow you to email all committee members and has a link for the committee website. That page has additional information on it for the Special Committee and on redistricting. One of the things you will find on that page is a link for meeting minutes and recordings. That's where the video for tonight will be, and it's usually there the next day pretty promptly. I'm not quite sure what time, but I expect it up there in the morning. We are here for redistricting, and redistricting is a process that occurs throughout the country every 10 years after the federal census is completed. That population data is used to create districts for representation at all levels of government. Here in New Hampshire, our Constitution says the responsibility for the creation of those districts is that of the legislature. The districts to be redrawn in New Hampshire will be the Congressional, Executive Council, State Senate, and State Representative. There is also redistricting for county commissioner districts and delegates to the state party convention. There were handouts outside the door for you with some information in regards to representative numbers for counties and information on Grafton County in particular. And for the House side, it would be helpful for us for public to comment on things particular to you here in Grafton County, but of course you can make comments on any districts that you desire. We are doing this event in every county. Some of you have already done so. There's a blue sign-up sheet outside the room to sign up to talk. We'll go to that. We're going to leave the other one out there. And because it's important for everybody to be recorded, we're going to ask that you come up here to be recorded because this sound system actually is the best that we've had so far. So there was one other thing I was going to announce, but I can't remember what it is. So we're going to begin as soon as I get to the blue sheet with public input. Oh, what I did want to add was in regards to the website, there's also a link to upload maps and comments, and someone has already done that promptly after, I think, our meeting last week. So that was really helpful. So you can look at those just as the committee members can. It is something that you can avail yourself of to submit information to us and to see what information we have received. So thank you for indulging me with this introduction.
The first person we have that has signed up to speak is Mr. Paul Phillips.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the House and Senate Special Redistricting Committees. My name is Paul Phillips. I'm a resident and voter in Plymouth, and I'm also a small business owner in Littleton. Welcome to Grafton County. It's good to see you all here, and I hope you'll be back soon. In particular, I hope you won't let this listening session be the last opportunity to hear from the voters of Grafton County about redistricting. Once you have drawn a set of proposed district maps for consideration by the General Court, I would like an opportunity, as with many other voters here in Grafton County and around the state, to offer comments on those maps before state legislators take any votes on them. It's one thing to talk about redistricting in the abstract, as we're doing here tonight, but it's quite another to be able to offer comments and perspectives on specific maps that you have drawn. All voters need to have an opportunity to comment on those maps, in addition to the opportunity you're providing here tonight. I also want to urge Speaker Packard and the members of these special committees to open up these listening sessions and all your public sessions to a remote option for those who cannot attend in person. The COVID pandemic is far from over, and many voters are justifiably reluctant to attend a public indoor gathering like this one. We need virtual sessions in which voters can participate online. Additional access and transparency can only increase the legitimacy of a process that many voters already find murky and confusing. The districts you are drawing are not your districts, they're our districts. And you do yourselves and the entire process a disservice if you do not take every available opportunity, including through remote participation, to hear from the voters whose right to fair representation is directly at stake. Fair representation is the key to your work. The 2011 redistricting process created some obvious partisan districts that have not served the voters of Grafton County very well. There are many examples I could point to, but for tonight, I'll limit my discussion to just 3 examples. The first example is the congressional districts. The 2011 redistricting map made an overtly political change. The map drawers wanted to help the re-election chances of the then incumbent member in CD2. And so they decided to swap one CD2 town, Campton, for one CD1 town, Center Harbor. We all know how that turned out politically, but in any event, Campton is now the only Grafton County town in CD1, and Center Harbor is the only Belknap County town in CD2. You know better than I what you had in mind for the congressional districts, but I would encourage you at the very least to return Campton and Center Harbor to congressional districts that reflect their geographic, social, and economic communities of interest. My second example is the state Senate districts. The 2011 map left Grafton County spread across 4 Senate districts. The northern towns are in SD1. The towns around the Plymouth area are in SD2. The towns around Hanover and Lebanon are in SD5. And then there's Waterville Valley, which is the only Grafton County community in SD3. I won't speculate about whether incumbency protection or other political factors drove that decision, but I would simply encourage you to find a way to return Waterville Valley to a state Senate district with other neighboring Grafton County towns. My third example is the Floaterial Districts. I certainly understand the history of Floaterial Districts, and I recognize the flexibility they add to your options as map makers trying to allocate 400 state representatives across all of New Hampshire's communities of interest. But I, for one, am not a fan of Floaterial Districts, at least as they affect me and my neighbors here in Grafton County. Yes, they make sense in areas of high population down south because they allow you to keep representative districts relatively small. But up here in Grafton County, Floaterial districts have the opposite effect. The Floaterial districts are large and spread out. One example is Grafton District 17, which covers 6 towns in an hour-long drive from Ashland on the shore of Little Swan Lake to Enfield on the shore of Mascoma Lake. The incumbent state representative does a terrific job and is the hardest working elected official I know. But Grafton 17 is just too big and spread out to reflect New Hampshire's model of a state representative district that is small and close to the voters. I would urge you, when you're laying out floaterial districts, which I assume you will do, to find a way to keep them as small as possible. Finally, I just want to note for the record that the 2020 census shows that New Hampshire's population of color grew by more than 70% of New Hampshire's population, or 1 out of every 8 Granite Staters. The proportion is even higher among younger Granite Staters. You have a constitutional duty not to ignore the demographic shifts in our state, but to do your best to create districts that will allow voters to elect a truly representative group of public officials. The demographic shifts in New Hampshire, as well as in the United States generally, are expected to continue and accelerate over the next 10 years. As voters, we are watching your work carefully to see how well you acknowledge and respect New Hampshire's changing population. I thank you for your time and your hard work. I look forward to talking to you again after your proposed preliminary maps for public review and comment. Thank you very much.
Susan Duncan?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It is my honor to be with you this evening. I'm Susan Duncan. I'm from Bristol, New Hampshire, which is in, if you look at that lovely map of Grafton County, the very bottom of the county. I wanted to share some of my observations of having had the honor of working 22 years in the New Hampshire State Senate as a nonpartisan employee. I came to this job having helped Ned with his Senate district campaign at that time. And when I was hired, someone quit one day and Carol Fletcher came to me and said, Susan, do you want a job for pay? And so I took it and stayed 22 years and loved it. And I was very blessed to be there. But you have a lot of observations when you sit there and you listen to committee hearings and you watch people work. One of the things that I will note is the thing that I have seen over and over in my experience. Not a one of you is north of exit 20. Your worlds revolve around the populated area of the state, whereas our worlds are very small. I used to say to Senator Pignatelli, I said, Senator, you can go to the mall and see more constituents than Ned can drive across half the district and find. We have to go 15 places to do that. And it's not equal. So one of the things that I would request is as you look at the districting, the areas up here are huge. They are big and it takes a long time to get from point A to point B and do the job that many of you are blessed enough to do in a visit at the mall or going to the pizza place and seeing 35 constituents. So that's one point that I really would ask you to think about, that we're not created equal. Ned used to call exit 20 the DNZ, the do nothing zone, because you had to fight like the Dickens to get anything to happen north of exit 20. And why? Because if the reps and the senators from Nashua and Manchester stood together, the whole rest of the Senate could vote and they couldn't pass something. It's not equal. And those of us in the North Country would like to be equal. You look at District 1, I don't know how in God's green earth anybody runs a campaign in Senate District 1. I thought Ned's 32 towns were tremendous. And it takes a lot of work. And we should thank these people that for the same $100, they're willing to do the same job. But it is a huge disadvantage. But thank God we have good people who want to work, who want to serve and want to come. And that's the main thing, is just please look at the district and think about, we are not equal in the North Country, and we would very much like to be equal. We'd love to be part of the committee that makes these decisions and weighs in. One of Ned's town, you can't get to from one of his towns to the other without leaving the county. You don't know these things unless you live up north. So that's my major pitch tonight, and I thank you very much for listening. And I'm not used to testifying on the record. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you. Next, Reverend Dr. Gail Kinney.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the record, my name is Gail Kinney and I am a resident of Canaan. I'm also a pastor with the United Church of Christ denomination. And so I see this matter of redistricting not just from the lens of a longtime resident of a town that has been denied of its constitutionally required representation, but I also see this matter through a basic moral lens. And so starting with the moral lens, I would implore this committee to be transparent in what you do, because the reality is that democracy dies in darkness. Also to give voters a fair notice for your meetings so people can plan and can try to get here physically. As much as possible. And also, I really implore you, again, as a matter of basic morality, to really make this process as transparent and as fair as possible, which means giving people a say once there are maps that you have put forth, so that there is an opportunity to react to something specific, again, just as opposed to providing you with general information before you've made your decisions. And finally, as a matter of basic morality, access to these sessions is really important. And I know that this committee has not made the decision directly to not allow remote access, but both for reasons of transportation and reasons of basic health and safety. Again, I would implore you to do what you possibly can to ensure that as you move forward, both in this current process and that after maps are developed, that there is an opportunity for access beyond just people having to be here in person. So now the specifics of being a resident of Canaan. So I know the Canaan Select Board has written to you. And so I urge you all to take that letter and to consider it really carefully. I would say that I think the Select Board was very polite, you know, in its communication, but I want to go back to, I think that their basic point was that legally, constitutionally, our town, my town, is required to have its own representative district, which we have been robbed of for the past decade. So I know that someone else is going to speak with specifics about Canaan, so I won't get into all of the details, but I want to go back specifically to the Constitution. So back in 2011, when the last redistricting process was done, I watched it very closely as I could, however, because it was done very quickly and behind closed doors. And even though in 2011, there was a constitutional requirement in this state that towns such as mine have its own district, I regret to say, and I think that some of you are already aware of this, that in that last redistricting process, in essence, what the operative stance was is the Constitution be damned. And I don't believe this particular committee, I certainly hope that you don't have sort of the same way of thinking, that the New Hampshire Constitution means, well, you can do it if you want to, but you don't really have to. So I want to just read again, and I know you're all familiar with this, but I want to just emphasize. So on November 7th, 2006, the citizens of this state voted to make a change in Part 2, Article 11 of the New Hampshire Constitution, so that, and in the constitutional document itself, it explains that this amendment was made in 2006 to enable towns with sufficient population to have their own representative district. And so the language of the Constitution reads, when the population of any town or ward, according to the last federal census, is within a reasonable deviation from the ideal population for one or more representative seats, the town or ward shall have its own district of one or more representative seats. So my question to you, as you go forth, my understanding is that there are at least 60 towns in the state of New Hampshire, I think a little more than 60, that were robbed in 2000 of the opportunity to have their own representative districts, even though the Constitution says shall. And so I would ask you, if you haven't already, as you've started the process, if you haven't taken the constitutional mandate and layered it on top of the map and said, okay, where are we not now following the Constitution? And how do we cure that with the maps that we are drawing going forward? If the constitutional requirement is not a starting point for this committee, then I have a question, why not? And I would ask the committee to explain to the people of New Hampshire, for whom the Constitution is a sacred document, why is that not taking place? And why isn't this all being cured? So again, I implore you, cure the constitutional deficiency going forward. And I thank you for the work that you are doing in this regard.
Thank you. Sybil Merrick. I hope I pronounced that right.
Thank you. Sybil Merrick. I live in Mulholland, New Hampshire. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I believe that redistricting should be completed in as nonpartisan a manner as possible. Perhaps it's naive for me to hope in this polarized era this can be done. But rather than one party putting its thumb on the scale to tilt districts in their favor, why can't there be an even-handed attempt at fairness? Why not allow all our voices to be heard? As a Black woman, I'm especially concerned about gerrymandering that diminishes the voices of people of color. Rather than suppression, why not elevation? Why not uphold the spirit of the Voting Rights Act and promote free and fair access to the polls? I also ask that this committee schedule hearings after the maps are drawn so that the public can weigh in on the redistricting work that has been proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ned Gordon.
Thank you, panel members, and thank you for the job that you're doing. And just want to start by saying I appreciate the fact that the job that you have to do is not an easy job. I'm sure redistricting is very difficult. I just have a couple of comments today. I won't be long. As you see, I worked for Susan Duncan and have for 22 years. So, but first of all, I represent District 9, Grafton County District 9. It's 5 towns. It's Ashland, Bristol, Bridgewater, Alexandria, and Grafton. And first of all, just to say I live in Bristol, love Bristol. I've lived there for 47 years now, and grew up in Alexandria. So the district is dear to me, and Bristol is dear to me. And Bristol very much would like to have its own representative. As you could, if you look at the numbers, we have 3,400 some odd people there. We're within a reasonable deviation of the ideal number, and Bristol would very much like to have its own representative. Right now, we have 2 representatives in the large district and a floaterial representative. The district, when I look at the districts, it looks like they were created by a machine. It looks like somebody had a computer program that just said, lump these, go down from the top of the county and go down the county and lump these towns together so you come out with an ideal number. And it looks like my district is 5 towns at the bottom of the county who really don't have much of a common interest. 3 of them do because they're in the Newfound district, the Newfound area school district. So Bristol and Alexandria and Bridgewater, they have a common interest. But then there's Ashland. There's only one road, basically, to get from Bridgewater to Ashland, one road, unless you go out into Belknap County, you go up the highway. And then on the other side, there's the town of Grafton. And that goes to and Ashland goes to the Plymouth School District, the Penny Baker School District. On the other side is Grafton. Grafton goes to the Mascoma School District. When I get called to go to school meetings, you have to drive 40 miles from one high school to the other in my district. This is a house district. It just doesn't make any sense. And it looks to me and I look through the districts and virtually it seems like almost every district in the county is like that for some reason. I just don't get it. It seems to me that if I were to start doing this redistricting, rather than plugging numbers into a computer, what I would do is start looking at the school districts because those are the commonalities of interest. And I'd look at the Newfound School District and say, hey, there's 5 towns in Grafton County that go there. You know, there's the Penny Baker. Let's lump the Penny Baker. There's the Mascoma. All of these school districts together would make a whole lot more sense because you have the commonalities of interest. You know, Ashland being on one side of the Merrimack River and Grafton focusing in on the Connecticut River communities have absolutely nothing to do with each other. They certainly, in terms of paying taxes, all have the same interest, but and they have very different interests. And so my suggestion is that you look at, particularly at the school districts and trying to put the school districts together and have some commonality of interest and put a human touch in the way you design the districts. And the only other comment, this is sort of on the Senate side, having served, I served 4 terms as a senator here in largely Grafton County. But and I think the point was well taken about Waterville Valley being outside the county. It makes, for whatever reason, maybe it was just a number, but it should be in Grafton County, and it should be within the Grafton County Senate district as best as it can be, which it used to be. And I understand that District 1 is probably going to have to move down because they have reduced population and further into Grafton County as it did in the last redistricting. But the one thing I'd say is for Senate District 2, which is the Senate district that serves this particular area, it would be best if you didn't, right now, it's 3 counties. It would be best if when you're redoing those Senate districts that if you, with Senate District 2, you just did 2 counties and not go into 3 separate counties. As a senator, it makes more sense to have to do with 2 county governments than it does 3 or 4 in some of them. So those are generally my suggestions. Again, I know it's a difficult job. I think I just echo what everybody else has said is that's just be fair and do as much as you can to put a human touch on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Sampson.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Mike Sampson. I'm the town administrator for the town of Canton. I've been in town government state and local politics for about 55 years. And I go back long enough so I remember the time when people gathered in communities in the state government, primarily for problem solving. It was not partisan. I feel comfortable saying that. I remember it well. I had the opportunity to experience it firsthand. And I appreciate it more and more every day, that willingness to gather together to make things happen, to fix problems that are shared. I work in Canaan. My board of selectmen sent you a letter of the signature of my board chairman. In terms of politics, two of my board members are Republicans, one's a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. That's the politics. All of us live in the town of Canaan. All of us live in the town of Canaan. And we have a little bit under 3,900 residents, citizens in Canaan. So we met the criteria back in 2010 for a single district. We meet the criteria still. We know what the Constitution says. We raised this, as a matter of fact, I raised this issue with the last committees that worked to design districts back in 2011. I've been around Canaan for a few years. And that time we also asked that it be considered that we have at least one seat that is in Canaan. So today I'm here before you. We have two representatives who drafted in 11 and 16. And I think it's 16. Hopefully I got that right. Both of them are from Wentworth. And I suspect some of you may have driven up through Wentworth, seen it. Some of you probably did not drive up through Canaan, but it's out there somewhere. And the key thing about it is, if I think of my own town, where I have to solve a whole bunch of problems every single year. I have to solve water problems. I have to solve sewer problems. I have to deal with private schools. I have to deal with public schools. I have to deal with a education funding formula that cripples our tax rate in Canaan. I think we're like the 15th highest in the state of New Hampshire. I have to deal with those problems. I have to deal with a community that doesn't want zoning. It also doesn't want the problems of when there is no zoning. I have to deal with a huge number of diverse problems in Canaan. I have a health center, so does the Wentworth area. And there is a private school somewhere nearby to Wentworth, but we have one in the community. We have thousands of acres of conserved land and protected land that doesn't help our tax base. Those are all issues that we have in Canaan. I just had to make a huge change, $1 million, $1.2 million change in our water system for 200 users. You know how much grant money I've got from the state of New Hampshire for that project? Zero. Zero. I know you all have projects, water and sewer projects. You're familiar with them. You know what the funding systems are. I've got zero. So I just went up 40% on my water and sewer rates to cover the cost of necessary repairs. Those are issues in Canaan. And with all due respect to our representatives in Wentworth, and I will say that I have gotten cooperation both from the Senate and from the House on issues that have come up before us. But in terms of having the day-to-day voice in the legislature so there could be conversation, dialogue, collaboration, it's not there. So I'm beseeching you. I think that there's some other language that may have been a little more harsh in the letter. But as a person that has to deal with those issues, I'm beseeching you to honor the constitutional requirement and give us a voice. Give us a voice. Please give us a voice so we can be part of the dialogue that'll solve problems. That's all I'm asking for is a voice. We got a lot of representatives. I think somebody mentioned there's 60 seats, 60 communities that fit this criteria. That's 60 out of 400. Please consider honoring the Constitution of the state and give us, when it says shall, that's what it's supposed to be, it's supposed to happen. Please give us a seat. If you still want to have us part of an 8-town legislative district, okay. But at least we got one voice that we would have that could represent the people that can't afford their water and sewer bills, that can't afford the education tax, that have other problems that are inherent in being in a community our size with the diversity we have. Because the alternative here is not, we really want to support problem solving, not partisan politics, not partisanship. So what do we have to do to guarantee a voice? When we go to elections next year, we're going to have to vote for anybody, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, name the party, as long as they're from Canaan. That will at least give us a Canaan voice. So let's try to be a little bit more reasonable, where we can actually pick the most qualified candidate in Canaan to represent us in the legislature for problem solving. Give us a voice, please. The Constitution says, I know your job is difficult. I did it in another state in Vermont. I know how difficult it is in every state. And I know that people have looked for solutions forever. The one advantage you have is 400 seats. It's better than having 150 seats or 120 seats in terms of being able to represent communities. So that's it. That's the end of the appeal. You do, I think, all of you got a copy of our letter. We mean it. It isn't just some letter that somebody did ask us to write it. We had it come from the community. But at least 2 of the board members were on the board in 2011 when this issue came up. Both of them strong Republicans, and both of them agreed at that point that what Canaan needed was a voice. So please, listen to us, please, and if you can do anything to address this, it would be helpful. It'd be terrible to campaign based purely on we need to have a voice from Canaan to elect the king. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next signed up, I have Linda Massimila from Littleton. Sorry about your last name.
You're good. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. There's a nice balance of representation.
Can you speak right into that thing? Pull it right down. There you go. Thank you.
Better?
Good. Speak up, just so we can hear you better.
Okay. There's a nice balance of representation, the way the North Country above the Notch districts are laid out right now. Living in the North Country especially, we know the importance of networking and collaborating to get things done. So that is what North Country reps do. They work together to address North Country issues for our constituents. And to me, that is one of our greatest strengths. Thank you.
Thank you. Darla Bruno?
Hello, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm Darla Bruno from Lebanon. I'm just a voter. I'm not as eloquent as some of these other folks that have spoken already, but I just want to say that I think we voters are kind of really tired of the partisanship and gerrymandering. We want fairly drawn districts that are neutral, not favoring one side or the other. And logically drawn as well. And we want transparency. We want to know if you're using software, we want to know what the algorithm is that decided what these districts are going to be. I hope we could avoid that route if possible. As we've heard from others, I think a little more thinking needs to go into it than just allowing software to draw the districts. And also, I think, you know, we need to hear the voices of the people who can't physically come to these meetings. The people who are sick, who are disabled, who are too elderly to come. You know, their voice counts too. They still vote. And they have a right to be heard both before and after the maps have been drawn. So please consider that. You know, our democracy is hanging by a thread right now. And I hope that you folks will be the people that bring it back from the brink rather than the ones that help push it over the edge. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Charlie Townsend.
Good evening to you, and thank you for coming to and holding this meeting. I know some of you came from a really long distance to be here. I appreciate that. I come from Canaan, New Hampshire. I served in the New Hampshire House for 4 terms, and so I'm a little bit acquainted with the redistricting process. I was there during the 2011 redistricting. I'm also somewhat acquainted with the New Hampshire Constitution. And besides the part of the Constitution that says a town like Canaan should have its own representative, the Constitution also said that districts, this is in Part 2, Article 9, says districts shall be elected and founded on principles of equality, and representative therein shall be as equal as circumstances admit. I've heard committee members say that 90% of the redistricting decisions are based on population, and it's only 10% that can deal with other things. I think that we have to change that because equal population equal towns does not mean equal population. Equal population is not equal quality of towns. Equality includes, as much as possible, the same regional planning area, the same school district certainly, the same medical and recreational resources, the same geographical area. And if districting disregards these principles of equality, the select committee would be ignoring our New Hampshire Constitution. I'll repeat some of what people have said before about the results of the redistricting in 2011 for Canaan. Canaan district, SAU 62, but the district goes into other school district. All of the townspeople of the district are not in the same school district. Canaan is in the Upper Valley Lake Summit, the regional planning area. Wentworth is not. Canaan is in the Mascoma Valley watershed. You have to go over the mountain to the Baker River watershed in order to get to the other end of our districts. Canaan's churches don't attract people from Wentworth, and Wentworth's church doesn't attract people from Canaan. Canaan residents use Canaan Community Healthcare and Dartmouth Hitchcock for medical needs. Wentworth residents don't come over the hill to us, they go toward Plymouth. Travelers from Canaan to Wentworth, the northern part of the Space District, travel through 2 towns, Groton and Rumney, in order to get from Canaan to Wentworth, the 3rd town in its district. So Wentworth does not share schools does not share regional plan, does not share labor and commercial areas, medical or recreational resources, or a geographical region with Canaan. And so I say that the district violates that article from Part 2 of our Constitution. The mathematical formula, which has been used for determining floaterial districts, theoretically gives each representative equal numbers of voters, but practically it clearly doesn't do that. The representative elected in Grafton District 9, my base district, has to win votes and serve 4,978 residents. The representative from District 16, Canaan's Floaterial District, which extends in a strain from Canaan to include Dorchester, Wentworth, Orange, Rumney, Ellsworth, and Thornton, here across the middle of the state, has to campaign and win votes from an area with 10,123 residents. This is not giving the two representatives the same number of voters to represent. It is not fair to either to the people of those towns or to the representative that represents such a diverse group. But there's a way that we can solve the problem. Canaan, with its population, 3,794, deserves its own district as required in Part 2, Article 11. Enfield, with a population of about 4,400, also should continue to have its own district. If we create a third district, which includes the excess population from Canaan and Enfield, and the towns of Grafton, Dorchester, and Orange, which share the same community, the same school district, and work together very well. The population of those combined towns is 9,983. If you think of three districts from Enfield, Canaan, and overlying district, including all 5 towns, it is within 3.8% of the target population. And so I hope that you will look very carefully and consider that as an alternative. I will give you a page, if I may distribute it, which tries to describe that. So thank you very much for being here and for listening to me. And I do want you to work hard to get a good representative in all of our areas.
Thank you very much for that. The next sign up that I see here from Grafton is Catherine Mulholland. I'm not sure whether it was Catherine or Carmen. Ms. Mulholland? Is that you?
Thank you. I'm Catherine Mulholland, and I was a representative of a Floaterial District, and it is a nightmare. I think that one of the things that we should consider more specifically than anything is to eliminate any Floaterial District at all. I felt it was very hard to represent my community, particularly, and this has been emphasized already, the school districts are absolutely crucial to the unity of the special district. And the only way we can work together is we have that commonality of interest, which overrides partisanship and deals with the good of the community and the communities being able to work together. And I think that's true of throughout the state of New Hampshire. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jean Barton. I sort of combined a couple of things on that, so set me straight.
My husband's already talked about the representation of Canaan in the past. I'm going to touch on it again. Used to be that we had in 2001, again, it was a Republican-controlled districting process, gave us a very nice district with the 5 Mascoma towns. And it was shaped about like this, with the 5 towns, they're all contiguous. And we had 3 representatives for the district. And if we did what Chuck has suggested and had 1 rep for Enfield, 1 for Canaan, and 1 with the excess combined with the other 3 smaller towns, would basically be revisiting what we had in 2001, which worked very well. The people in the Mascoma committee, Mascoma district, we see each other if we go to the school board meetings, the school. We also see each other we go to each other's home days. We go to the same churches. We go to the same shops. We go to the same restaurants. We see each other in so many ways. The representatives knew people, and people knew who the representatives were. And now we don't. We have people who are way off in the town that you can't get there from here without leaving the area, because the Aldi road that actually goes between them is closed in the winter. And I wanted to say also is that the representation, I thought at one point, well, maybe the representation is making more fair for the representatives than it is for those being represented. But it doesn't work very well either way. For instance, Enfield, which is a town of 4,400, has 2 representatives, one all on its own and one in the Floaterial District. Whereas Grafton, which is a town of about 1,300, about a third the size of Enfield, has 3 representatives. That seems pretty weird. So that town is 1/3 the size of the other, has 1.5, has 50% more representation. Because of the way the districts were divided up. That also, someone who represents Enfield has 4,400 constituents, but there's another representative in one of the Floaterials, and that Floaterial district only has 1 representative, who has 14,000 constituents. So it's not fair to anybody coming and going. It's not fair to the people who need representation. It's not fair to the people who are trying to represent the people who elect them. So please consider very carefully how you're grouping communities and how fair the representation is to each person and how reasonable the job is that you're assigning to each of the representatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Andrews has signed up. David, did you have some maps? Did you want to go at the end?
No, I didn't have any maps. I'll be quick too.
Okay.
Good evening, David Andrews. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Grafton County in particular. It's been mentioned before, but for the congressional districts, Hampton is kind of an outlier in that it's in District 1. It's the only town in Grafton County in District 1. It's the only town in its SAU in District 1. It's the only town in its public health region in District 1. It's really should be in District 2 with the rest of Grafton County. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the state house districts in Grafton County. The difficult part of districting in New Hampshire is the calculation of the floaterials. And I know I've done a lot of mapping, and I spent hours trying to come up with maps for the house districts in Grafton County. And the absolute best I could do with the current methodology was still having 3 towns not get their own representative that should. I was unable to give, I believe it was Plymouth, Enfield, and Canaan, their own representative using the current methodology. But with the alternative component method that I developed, it would allow for all of the towns that are eligible for their own districts to have their own districts and thus their representatives. So I would just ask that you consider the alternative component method again as a methodology for calculating floaterials. I would be happy to answer any and all questions pertaining to that methodology. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Mr. Andrews, for those of you who don't know, has been in all of our public input sessions. So if I seem familiar to him, that's the reason. Sue Prentice.
Systematically, mask off, glasses on, mic down. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm a latecomer this evening. My name is Sue Prentice. I'm from Lebanon, New Hampshire, and I'm also the state senator for District 5, which includes Lyme, Hanover, Canaan, Enfield, Lebanon, Cornish, Plainfield, Claremont, and Charlestown, proudly. I just want to speak briefly tonight on a few points. I was struck as I came into this. This is my first time speaking before a redistricting committee in this process. That we are all here tonight. You are all here because we're here for the people. We're here for the granted staters, and your job, and ultimately our job, is to make sure that maps are drawn that provide fair and equal representation. I think I rise and shine every day remembering that our job is for the people that we serve here in the granted state. I want to make a few quick points just about the process, the before and the after. So speaking to fairness and to transparency, public hearings. So we're having those obviously because we're here tonight, and I know of others, but including, I think, and others have spoken about this. In this day and age of a worldwide pandemic, it's unprecedented well, number one, a worldwide pandemic like this is unprecedented in our time, but not having access for people who are immunocompromised, have other health issues, as well as the inability to travel. I find that unfortunate and would hope it could be reconsidered. I am pleased that there's live streaming taking place. I think that is definitely a step in the right direction, but I think we need to open that door. Websites or a common location where you could go and not only see the dates, but find information. Now, when I Googled, it might be the platform that I'm using, but when I Googled New Hampshire redistricting, gerrymandering, really focused on redistricting in New Hampshire, I finally found my way to the general court website where I found I could look for or locate two areas that I could click on to learn about the Senate side and the House side. But I think elevating the prominence of that, and I could be missing something, I think is also equally as important for public access. Routine public communication, again, through websites and these types of hearings, and making sure that at the end of the day, the rationale that is used is made clear and clearly described to the members of the public. Again, speaking in the before and then the after, we're here now talking about the process. But more importantly, and I've heard others speak to this tonight, will be the opportunity that we should have to respond to the maps once they are drawn. And I, like you, and I'm sure many of you in this room, if not all, look forward to that opportunity as well. I'd like to speak to the maps themselves and what I consider what they should look like, and just thinking about inclusive, that maps should be inclusive with engagement opportunities. So we're talking about common areas, common problems that need common solutions. And so how do we do this? One, we think about the landscape. There are rural and urban areas, suburban areas, micropolitans throughout this district as well as throughout the state. They need to be considered. The population numbers and the growing diversity in our population. So diverse race, ethnicity, and the numbers multiple times tonight, serving multiple county governments, multiple school boards. Those should be considered as well. And social compacts, I believe, are equally as important. I was reflecting, as it was Gene Townsend was talking about, the Canaan Farmers Market is one of the most popular places in Canaan to be on a Sunday morning, and neighbors know neighbors. Elected officials know elected officials. And that's how they talk about the common problems and the common solutions that they're going to work on together. And I think that we need to take that into consideration and preserve that. And the last thing that I'm going to say is I'm going to join in the voices without, I'm going to join in the voices that are advocating for a representative for the town of Canaan. We've heard from the town administrator, Mike Sampson. We've heard from Gail Kinney. We've heard from Chuck Townsend, and we've heard from Gene Townsend, not just about the constitutional responsibility that we have, but the importance. And this decision has been looming for years, and it's well known. And I think that town administrator was one of the speakers who could talk about the common problems and the common solutions that aren't as easily solved with the distance provided between how they are represented now, and look at the numbers look at their population numbers and their diversity. So I'm joining, without repeating what's been said, the chorus advocating for Canaan to have their own representative. Again, I know many of you have traveled far. See one of my colleagues who came up here all the way from Rochester, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and thank you for the work that you are doing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak?
Hi, thank you for taking my testimony. My name is Mary Heckon Phillips, and I'm a Hanover resident. I'm also a representative from Grafton County District 12, serving Hanover and Lund. I am a practicing attorney out of Concord, and I hold a master's degree in political science. So that kind of gives you a color of the background of my comments. First, I'd like to thank all the folks who've been here tonight giving testimony and participating in this process. It's a great practice in democracy to hear from people and to influence our process. And I'm just so thankful that so many people showed up tonight. I'd also like to thank the committee. This is obviously a difficult job, can often be thankless. So I appreciate your public service to our community and our state, and for endeavoring in this difficult task. It is noble work, and we do appreciate it. Thank you. I do have a few concerns tonight that I'd like to bring to the committee's attention. Specifically, that Article 1, Section 2 requires the apportionment of state representatives of the states. That must be carried out every 10 years, which we know is the census, which obviously is now complete and why we're here. And you are in the thick of redrawing these maps. My concerns are fivefold. One, I do represent Hanover and Lyme, as mentioned before. And I'd like to bring to your attention that Hanover warrant article number 27 was passed at our town meeting in 2021 this year, asking and resolving this process for redistricting should be a fair and effective representation of New Hampshire voters, and that an independent redistricting commission should draw these maps in a way that does not rely on partisan data like election results, party registration, or favor political parties or candidates. I'd just like to reiterate that in the spirit of my next few comments. I am concerned about a fair and transparent process for redistricting before and after the maps are drawn. Let's talk about what that would look like. Before, proper notice should be given at least 10 days prior to hearing for the other jurisdictions that you'll be seeing in the next few weeks. We need these 10 days because people need time to arrange childcare, elder care, work arrangements, and etc. This time is crucial, and I implore you to include it in your future meetings. Access. Public hearings should be accessible to those who cannot attend in person, given obviously the pandemic that we're all experiencing, but also other health concerns and ability concerns, childcare or elder care that I just spoke about, and also work arrangements. Remote AV access, like Zoom, for instance, should be made available for these hearings so that all, regardless of status or situation, can participate by providing testimony, by hearing the comments in the room, and by watching your reactions. I implore you, before these maps are drawn, to collect these facts, these concerns, and this testimony, to compile this record in such a way prior to drawing the maps, but also to incorporate those exact findings into your map drawing process. A fair and transparent process will also include this work after the maps are drawn. First, notice is an important issue. Unlike the last redistricting effort, I'd like your committee to give more than 24 hours notice when those maps are redrawn for public review and comment, and to make those redrawn maps available publicly as soon as possible. Please don't delay. A secretive process will not benefit anyone. I'd also like you to issue a report responding to the facts and the testimony that you've heard across the state, and explain how you chose to or not to include that in your redrawing efforts. A fair and transparent process should also include an important methodology review. Like many other young professionals who move to our area, I represent a key constituency of taxpayers who believe that science, facts, logic, and reason should be driving our state's policymaking to solve problems just like this, redistricting. That means I understand partisanship will definitely play a role, but I'm imploring you, please avoid the dangerous abuses that can be very enticing when redrawing lines. Simply put, there should be no packing and no cracking. When large cities and towns are packed together and small communities are cracked apart, it becomes very obvious that these constituents are being robbed of their real representation. A second concern tonight, or sorry, I guess the third concern tonight that I have are constitutional considerations. I'd like to remind you that Daniel Webster once said, "The right to choose a representative is every man's portion of sovereign power." I may remember this being cited in Burling versus the Speaker of House 2002 before our Supreme Court. Also, Part 2, Article 9 and 11 of our New Hampshire Constitution require for about each 3,444 person, there should result a single seat for either a town or a multi-municipal area or floaterial district, in a way that it shows each person's vote has equal weight. Our state law requires that state legislative districts be contiguous and maintain the boundaries of towns, wards, or unincorporated places. These so-called floaterial districts should be among communities of common interest, something that's been raised several times tonight. Specifically, I'd like to speak to the executive council maps, which should be redrawn to more accurately reflect common communities of interest and reflect partisan balances within the state. For example, the second district's partisan gerrymandering is really quite egregious, and I implore you to fix it. A federal consideration is that congressional districts should be and remain competitive districts. You can see through population shifts and through our census that not much has changed for our congressional districts. Any shifts that have arrived or that may change in your maps should remain largely the same in terms of the line drawing. These should reflect common school districts, public utilities, and fire departments. I'd also like to remind you that the New Hampshire Supreme Court in the Burling versus the Speaker of the House case in 2002 was a place where our Granite State justices hired a consultant and determined a more equitable apportionment under the court's plan as it's identified in the case. I encourage this commission to use a similar methodology to avoid additional litigation as the outcome of this redistricting process. Furthermore, let the United States Supreme Court encourage, be your guiding light, excuse me. I encourage this commission to rely heavily on Reynolds versus Sims from 1965 and establish, in that case, the principle for one person, one vote for an equipopulation requirement. Beware as well that the Equal Protection Clause can provide grounds for any future racial gerrymandering claims originating in our metropolitan areas or southern regions. My fourth concern is about potential litigation. Being a lawyer, something I know about, First, the cost of litigation. The Center for Public Integrity in 2012 released grading reports for transparency across the United States. And in 2010, New Hampshire scored very low. The process was burdened here in our state because it was hidden largely from the public view. When the maps were released at the very last minute, it didn't help the process as well. Our grade was an F. Expensive litigation no doubt followed because of that untransparent and unauthentic process. And who foot the bill? Our taxpayers. In December 2020, the National Conference of State Legislatures published a work entitled More Redistricting Transparency, Less Litigation by Rebecca Green. One of the conclusions is that when there's an increased, authentic, transparent process for redistricting, there's a statistically significant drop in litigation rates. And now, another conclusion was that the courts tend to draw adverse inferences against secretive redistricting processes. We can do better here in New Hampshire. Let's aim for an A grade. Let's have authentic transparency throughout our process and avoid expensive litigation for our taxpayers. My last concern is the consequences of gerrymandering. It hurts all of us. It hurts us because districts do not reflect the accurate balance of partisanship. It further divides our political parties. One party is given a majority in the state house despite only having a minority of the votes. And it's at the expense of the minority party. Politicians are picking their voters. Voters don't pick their elected officials in this case. As Ms. Massimilla has said earlier tonight, just regular voters want neutral districts. Heed their call. In 2019, the Brennan Center reported the majority of Americans opposed partisan gerrymandering. And in 2019, the ALG Research opinion poll showed that 70% of voters from all parties agree that SCOTUS should place some limits on gerrymandering. And 55% of all voters with partisan affiliation have unfavorable views of the practice. Ask yourself, what does this mean politically over time if you continue to draw these partisan maps? What does it mean for your party? What does it mean for our state? Another consequence of gerrymandering is that our districts will not represent the people itself. It will limit our voting rights, it will hurt our children, and hurt people of color. It divides communities from their natural commonalities and traffic flow, their geographic and natural landmarks. A political question for you. At a time when public confidence in government is at an all-time low, if you create a preordained outcome under New Hampshire GOP leadership to deprive the voters of any meaningful influence in the next election, ask yourself, are you prepared to own the decision to rob those Americans of their most fundamental way to participate in our democracy? Ronald Reagan says, Ronald Reagan said, that's all we're asking for, to end the undemocratic and un-American practice of gerrymandering. The fact is gerrymandering has become a national scandal. Do not let New Hampshire become the next North Carolina, the next Ohio, the next Pennsylvania. National embarrassment for this kind of redistricting, extremely partisan, on top of the recent polarized climate in Concord, will only add to our situation. I'm trying to give you notice that an egregious gerrymandering map, is going to add one more tick marked to the reasons why New Hampshire could be stripped of its first in the nation primary. I implore you, as an attorney, I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. I deeply believe in the rule of law. More than that, I have a professional duty and a moral obligation to support laws that are equitable, inclusive, and just for all Granite Staters. I'm honored to serve the communities of Hanover and Lyme. This community and my conscience requires my advocacy for a fair and independent redistricting process. I encourage you to please take these concerns into consideration in your endeavors moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming in your testimony. I apologize. I think that I skipped over. Is there an Ingrid Curtis here? Thank you.
I'm Ingrid Curtis from Hanover, and I want to thank the committee for their work and also say you have a tremendous opportunity right now in this redistricting to improve the partisan politics that we've gotten into. As a state, we have many, many things that we care about in common, especially if we are redistricted better in a better way for the natural communities to be united in their representation. And I think we're all unhappy with what's happened with the increasing partisanship in this country. And this is a way, if you can be transparent, people can know why the decisions were made and have input on why the decisions were made. And common sense is used, that we can make a start towards making things better and not do another step of having partisan redistricting that harms us all. And I assume that you all care about New Hampshire and the interest in New Hampshire. And that we all know that that's the best way to go. That in the long term, making decisions based on anything but fairness and equality are really harmful to the country. So I implore you to use your opportunity to improve things in the state and not go down the road we've been going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here with us tonight that would like to speak in regards to this process? I'm not seeing anybody. I want to thank you all for coming out. We appreciate your participation in this and letting us know. And I'm happy to hear from Canaan. We thought we might based on the letter. So, thank you for coming and reinforcing where you are. Have a safe trip home, everybody. Yes.
Thank you. I was asked to ask as a matter of understanding for our committee members, if there are going to be votes taken at our regular committee meeting in Concord on Thursday, and if so, what they are.
I'm not sure, and I've been in communication with your ranking member in regards to that. I believe you received a copy of that email, and that would be the forum to continue that discussion. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Good night, everybody. I think the lights are all off.